Hey sis, guess what I did? Guess what I did? Ooh. How would I know what that... Oh dear. Let's see. This one is called Under the Thorns. It's got some absolutely gorgeous artwork. It is a mystery romance. Clara, a maid, arrives at a shrouded manor. Rumor has it her new employer is dangerous and has dismissed 13 maids before her. What secret is he hiding? Is this a Bluebeard situation? Captivating tale of mystery, suspense, and romance. Absolutely gorgeous artwork. Love the backgrounds, too. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah. We'll just take a quick little gander, a quick little look-see. Oh, and it goes full screen. How nice. Loadering. Ooh, it's pretty. Under the Thorns. Start. Chapter 1. Loud noise woke me up from my sleep, and I reluctantly opened my eyes while still seated in the rattling carriage. Hang on, I'm gonna... yeah. Just a little bit. Daylight had emerged while I was sleeping, casting a feeble glimmer into the dim and shabby confines of the carriage. How far are we now? With a smooth move, I pulled myself up from where I was sitting, trying to fix my messy hair. As the world outside buzzed with noise, the coachman spoke to me through a small opening. You've woken up right on time. We're close now. Steady yourself and get ready to jump off. Are you certain we are in proximity? What was that about jumping? You've not got much faith in folks, have you? Reasonably, my reservations were justified. He had been repeating, like a wearied mantra, that our arrival was imminent, yet with no success. Perhaps stung by my inquisitive stare, the coachman gestured forward the crest of the hill. You see that, lass? I followed the line of his finger, and a stately manor loomed atop the elevation. Though it was too far away to discern its precise features, its sheer grandeur was unmistakable. I leaned closer to the window, striving to absorb the view, and then turned my gaze back to the coachman. What can you share about the manor? I'm just passing through, lass. I ain't got much to offer in the way of knowing stuff. Well, that's a shame. A downright shame. Perplexed by his lack of certainty for someone of his occupation, I nodded in response. The carriage in which I'd been dispatched was hardly in impeccable condition. Whether it was the pall of tobacco smoke or the jolts from the uneven terrain, my stomach had churned during the journey, and my posterior ached. In all candor, the remuneration they had offered was alluring, albeit with doubts about its authenticity. However, given the prestige of the family name, I steeled myself and persevered. I'm not entirely sure if this is a wise course of action. I watched with trepidation as the manor drew nearer. Ooh, it's pretty! My countenance bore a trace of consternation as the formerly imperceptible features of the estate slowly coalesced into view. A fleeting moment of regret brushed against my consciousness as I pondered whether I should have remained in the townhouse, notwithstanding the diminished pay. Irrespective of the manor's facade, the main entrance was the epitome of pristine maintenance. It stood as a constant symbol of the family's ostensible reverence for it, regardless of the anticipation of guests. In stark contrast, this manor appeared indifferent to such niceties. The towering fence, shrouded in unsightly ivy, and the corroded, peeling iron gates bespoke a manor unconcerned with aesthetics. The sky, its countenance morphing in response, good God, all these countenances, exuded not merely an eerie ambience, but an unmistakable uncanniness. The music says the opposite. An involuntary gasp escaped me. Could there be a more perfect setting for a mystery novel? I can think of a couple. gothic manor that's full of doom and gloom as opposed to cute lavender glory and flowers, among other things. Look at the flowers. The coachman, who had been monitoring me for any signs of amusement, erupted in laughter. Fret not, young lass. This is the poshest place I've ever stepped foot in. I mean, right? I had my doubts, considering the ups and downs I'd already faced. But what choice did I have? I straightened my shoulders and prepared for the unsettling creak of the iron gates swinging open. Well, dang. I guess that was unsettling. The carriage moved through the open gates, passing through the gardens, and eventually stopping in front of the main entrance. As I got off, carrying my belongings, the sheer size of the garden momentarily captivated me. The coachman's assurance proved correct. The garden was indeed well kept, although it seemed strangely out of context. I don't know why that would be. While I looked around, a voice called out to me. Miss Clara Hart. A footman. He approached with a friendly smile on his face as he extended his hand. I was ready to reciprocate with a handshake when I noticed his gaze shifting towards my luggage. I quickly shook my head. No need for you to carry the burden. Please, do not trouble yourself. It is my duty. I assure you, it's just one bag. After witnessing my hesitation, he initiated polite conversation, attempting to break the ice. Is this your first foray into serving a manor, Miss Hart? Indeed, only last week. I was in service as Lady Jane's maid in her townhouse. Fortuitously, I had been a lady's maid for some time. And he astutely broached the topic with tact. I've heard she's quite exacting. Is that so? Well, she maintains her own standards, but she is a fair employer. She did establish a multitude of rules, and I often found myself inadvertently breaking them, earning her displeasure. Nevertheless, recognizing my departure was tinged with concern, she kindly provided me with a letter of introduction to the manor, which was a consolation. The footman responded with a reassuring smile to my answer. Our manor shares certain similarities. I trust you will find yourself acclimated, Miss Hart. I certainly hope so. The conversation infused my voice with a natural cheerfulness as the tension from our earlier discussion faded. Life within the manor appeared less formidable with a colleague of his caliber. Ooh, it's nice in here. Kinda looks like the FGO background when you go to Princess Ilia's castle. Passing resemblance. Love the staircase, though. Absolutely gorgeous coloring. After guiding me to the central hall of the manor, he assumed responsibility for my luggage and departed with brisk, confident strides. I shall attend to your luggage. You know, whole one bag. I felt a sudden pang of deception. Why? Oh. Just as the words began to form in my mind, an individual approached, striding purposefully towards me. Dressed in a dignified black coat, she exuded an air of authority, her impeccable posture and immaculately coiffed hair leaving not a single strand astray. So this is the person I am to meet. I cast an appraising glance her way. Though I speculated she might be the mistress of the manor, her attitude indicated otherwise. When our eyes met, she graced me with a composed smile and extended a greeting. I have eagerly awaited your arrival. Have you found the journey to be taxing, miss? Oh, not at all, thanks to your pre-arranged carriage. I am delighted to hear that. I am Olivia Quillia. I assume Quiller. The housekeeper, and I would be the most appreciative if you addressed me as Miss Quiller. Certainly, Miss Quiller. And so our greeting came to a close. Mrs. Quiller promptly retrieved a pocket watch, checked the time, and proceeded to explain the schedule in a methodical, clerical fashion. As a rule, I would introduce you to Lord Robert, but, given his recent indisposition, it's evident he won't be graced with his presence. In lieu of that, I've determined that I shall promptly accompany you on the tour of this manor. Is that agreeable to you? The implication leaned more towards an announcement than a question, yet it was information I should have been privy to in advance, so I had no objections. Given the circumstances, I think it's the lone alternative. In response, Miss Quiller graced me with a smile of a different sort, a rather enigmatic one. Perfect. Incomprehensible words slipped from her lips. Mrs. Quiller took no notice of my attempt to inquire as she began leading the way. I followed her, feeling as if I were being abruptly steered. My eyes retraced to the entrance I had entered, only to see the door slowly closing behind us. Good gracious, this is like reading a Regency novel. It's like Jane Austen or something. High praise. Well, actually, I don't know. But it's that vibe. The Bronte sisters and all that, just the whole thing. In the corridor to the right of the manor house, we strolled through an area that evoked a cloister. See what I mean? Portraits of ancestors adorned one wall, bearing witness to their illustrious days. However, the manor's prevalent eerie atmosphere made it challenging to fully appreciate these depictions. I am not seeing this eeriness the main character keeps talking about. It's somewhat disquieting to think that they appear so lifelike and might be observing me. I mulled over this while stealing a glance at Mrs. Quiller, who forged ahead. Her back was turned to me, and she continued to provide explanations whether I followed or not. While she delved into the history of the manor and the biographies of its ancestors, my understanding was limited to a general grasp of the layout. She refrained from inquiring whether I had absorbed the information, as if she had little expectation. Nonetheless, I paid close attention. She elucidated the tasks I would undertake within the manor. One might assume cleaning is simple, but Mrs. Quiller regarded it with greater significance. And if you'll excuse me, I have a doggy to see something about, so I'll be right back. Yes, I heard you. So demanding. You know who else is exacting? It's not just Mrs. Quiller, it's also these pups. Come on. I hope you can't hear all that. Maybe you can. Can you? I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna let them do their thing and bark. We'll see how that goes. It'll be fine, though. One way or another. Back to my Regency novel. In particular, she emphasized the importance of monitoring the entry to private rooms and whether the doors were left open or closed. In this manor house, we leave the door to an unoccupied room open. If closed, it implies the presence of guests or occupants of the house. Should you need to enter a closed room, knock and await a response before entering. What if there's no response? Do not enter. Request your supervisor to handle it. And would that be you, Miss Quiller? I shall remember that. I found myself slightly confounded, though I grasped the protocols of the manor. Mrs. Quiller, content with my composed demeanor, ascended the staircase without uttering another word, her gaze fixed upon the corridor's expanse. The next noteworthy point leads us to the bedchambers. She halted abruptly. I recoiled a few steps, narrowly avoiding a collision with Miss Quiller's back. Mrs. Quiller, typically serene, now appeared shaken. Mrs. Quiller? I turned my gaze toward her, pondering the nature of the disturbance. At the corridor's terminus, devoid of life amid a crouching darkness, an enigmatic figure cast a long, human-like shadow. And I feel like the music should have changed for this. A mysterious presence meandered, swaying as if in spectral dance. It seemed oblivious to our existence. I felt a quiver of fear at the sight of this unfathomable phenomenon. Mrs. Quiller! I cried out, sensing the imperative need to retreat. Simultaneously, Mrs. Quiller seized my wrist, guiding us swiftly downstairs. The evasion led us to the courtyard. I curled up, shivering from the biting chill of the wind. Seriously, something legit creepy potentially just happened, but the music is still just la-di-da-di-da. Whereas Mrs. Quiller stood rigid, seemingly unaffected by the cold. Her eyes remained fixed on me in silence. A wordless pressure lingered, making my mouth go dry. After a while, Mrs. Quiller broke the silence. Lady Jane's reference letter attests to your meticulous nature and taciturn disposition. To be candid, in my previous employment, I was somewhat of a troublemaker. Not precisely a gossip, but curiosity often got the better of me. Oh, you're perfect for this novel. I caused Lady Jane headaches with various incidents, but never by divulging secrets. Importantly, this monologue is happening in her head. I nodded awkwardly, and Mrs. Quiller's mouth corners twitched. She draped a gentle arm around my shoulders, holding my gaze. Miss Hart, if you encounter such a sight, flee. It's an imperative rule you must adhere to. You mean you must? Without exception. She whispered impatiently, redirecting her focus to the manor house. Believe it or not, the manor is besieged by the same peculiar phenomena as before. I rolled my eyes, struggling for words. What was the appropriate response in this perplexing situation? Luck was on my side if I refrained from saying, well, it's plausible considering one of the shadows is at my feet. Regardless, Mrs. Quiller seemed equally perplexed, convinced to call it a bringer of misfortune. I pondered, attempting to formulate a response. I inquire because you mentioned it's a rule. Is it akin to the guidance against closing doors? It bears similarity. Mrs. Quiller mentioned that she would deliver an employee handbook to my room. In a soothing tone, she reassured me of her understanding of my confusion. You needn't worry. It's a collection of rules that shall resolve themselves. Rules. If it proves challenging, inform me. I tend to maintain a well-staffed house, allowing for your return home. No, entrust me with the responsibility. I shall endeavor. Now burdened with the responsibility of providing sustenance for my family, I had no intention of retreating to my former employment. Appeased by my response, Mrs. Quiller bestowed upon me another satisfied smile. Surprisingly, the mausoleum was quite close to the manor house. By turning your head, it offered a view of the manor's right wall. A bold decision for a residence steeped in history and grandeur. The ancestor of the lord of this manor, devoted to his departed wife, orchestrated the change to gaze upon her grave at will. In a society where arranged marriages prevailed, the fervent love struck me as eccentric. Although I was assigned to tend the mausoleum, I wasn't given any explicit instructions. Alice was made responsible to oversee my training, new character Alice, and teach me the details of the daily tasks. Whatever Mrs. Quiller chanted to me about the owner of the mausoleums seemed to go in one ear and out the other. Oh, that's why we're getting an exposition dump. She's just getting an explanation. Okay, cool. Just as I was growing accustomed to the surroundings, I sensed an unforeseen wave of attention fixing upon me. Puzzled, I raised my head to witness a colossal figure materializing beyond the glass. The recollection of dancing shadows tensed my shoulders. Oh, Mrs. Quiller, over there. Mrs. Quiller fell silent and followed my gaze. She then tried to assuage my fear with a smirk. Fear not, he is not one of them. Sorry, him? He is Lord Edward, the heir to this prestigious manor. I feel like we should be getting a CG. With precision, she outlined the figure against the cloudy sky. His hair, a shade of golden ash blonde, matched the clear blue sky of his eyes, and the static, calm demeanor defined him. Our gazes met, his fingers fiddling with the delicate chain of his necklace as he observed our surroundings. A look of surprise crossed his face. He attempted to communicate something to me through subtle mouth movements. I found myself captivated, studying his lips with genuine intrigue. I swear to God we should have a CG or, like, his sprite or something. Focus. My gaze might have lingered had not another voice snapped me back. We've been staring at her this whole time, though. Pardon me. I hastily clapped my hands, assuming a polite gesture, feeling my face uncontrollably warm. Absorbed in observing the Lord, I momentarily overlooked Mrs. Quiller's presence. Her eyes narrowed for that very reason. Could you tell me more about Lord Edward? His name is Edward. Is he a vampire? Okay, that's probably overused. The question, intended as an invitation, earned only a raised eyebrow from her. A momentary gaze at the window preceded a dismissive response. He is an unruly man, a difficult one to deal with. Not getting that from the waifish fairy tale description we got, but whatever. I recommend you avoid talking to him as much as possible. Oh, understood. Stiff responses left me feeling out of place, a contrast to her earlier praise of the manor. Even if he was indeed unruly, it wasn't a particularly kind characteristic of him. Mrs. Quiller added a cautionary note, apparently unsatisfied with my response. Should he visit the mausoleum, give him space. He's very sensitive. Our conversation ended there. Mrs. Quiller spoke only when explanations were necessary, but there was a whole lot of talking, and I, stunned by her continuous deflections, remained silent. Hence the sloppy induction to the manor reached its end. Oh my goodness. Chapter 2. I don't know, is this game complete? I feel like I need to check this now. This is long. Wait, do I need to click something? Okay, there we go. Because I was pressing space. Okay. So, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and put this on mute for now. So what I'm getting from chapter 1 so far is she arrives, like, at this place, and it's like, you know, something out of an Austen or a Bronte novel where it's like that mystery thing. She met the lady, Mrs. Quiller, who, like, runs things, and she's, like, super severe and stuff, but even she gets shaken because there's actual, like, shadows and ghosties, and I guess everyone acknowledges them at the manor, but they're all just like, it's okay, we just follow these rules, and everything's chill, so we just do stuff. And then she also saw the lord of the manor from afar, was like, OMG, he's so hot, and the lady was like, excuse me, eyes to yourself, and she was like, okay, and then we're going into chapter 2, so, this is pretty engaging. It's nice. Cool. But I'm gonna revisit at a different point, probably, so, we'll just be moving on to something that maybe is a little shorter, maybe is a little more, little more, It's a Happy Cat Tavern!